We all know that communication skills are crucial for any relationship. And when somebody has those skills, oh my gosh, they make so much of an impression to you and to me. But we've also had those moments where we're really nervous to talk with people because we don't know how our request or our message will be received. Well, this podcast, fortunately, is going to go over all the things, the science, the tips, the tricks, and the ways to make sure that you can have the best relationships that you can through the way that you communicate. And after listening to these episodes, you can do so fearlessly with confidence, knowing that you can be relatable to anybody you choose. Welcome to the Attractive Relationships Podcast. All right, in this episode, we're going to talk about the 6 things that will help you to eliminate toxic arguments in your conversations. And not to say that you won't have disagreements, right? Disagreements are part of the game of any relationship. But when we have a disagreement with somebody, we want to be able to walk away and feel like we are better off. Maybe we came to a different conclusion, a certain resolution that makes us feel better, as opposed to being more angry with each other and more tense. And that would be a toxic situation to be in. So here are the 6 things that we can include in these conversations. If you can apply any one of these, your conversations will do better. If you can apply all 6, the more of these you can apply, obviously, the better it will be. So let's start off with number 1. And number 1 is something I learned from my friends Elena and August. They have a great relationship. As a matter of fact, I interviewed them on a podcast a while back, and they enter their discussions with, are you emotionally sober? As you can imagine, talking to a drunk person, like a literally drunk person, would be a very difficult thing to have a conversation. They may not even remember exactly how that conversation went the next day. All right. And the same thing, it comes with our emotions. If we are drunk off of emotions that distance us, disconnects us from people, like if we're drunk off the emotion of anger or drunk off of the emotions of frustrations, and you know that it is because just like alcohol, it affects how your body feels, but it also affects your brain. You know, if our brain is shrouded and clouded in anger or judgment or frustration, we might not be emotionally sober. So how do we become emotionally sober so we can be in a position to maybe have some of these tough conversations? And number 1, we can take some time away. We can remove ourselves from that tense environment to give ourselves a moment to calm down, right? Another thing that really helps is understanding what really caused those emotions. You know, I've come across a lot of people who have great relationships, and one thing that they don't do is they don't blame the person. They look at the situation and say, what is it about this situation that triggered me to these emotions? All right. And if you can pinpoint the situation or something within that situation that triggered the emotions while not blaming the other person's actions, that is a good way to know if you're emotionally sober. So that's number 1, be emotionally sober. And if you are in that place and the other person is in that place, we can now start to incorporate some other things. Here's number 2. And this is something to avoid, and is asking a question that starts with why. Like, why did you do what you did? All right. Now, if you follow the program that I coach, you know, one of the 3 C's that we talk about is lead with curiosity. And so one might say, but Rico, I'm just trying to lead with curiosity. I am genuinely curious why they did what they did. And that's very fair. Here's the problem with leading with curiosity in that way is that what we really want from the other person is to show empathy for us, to understand where we're coming from. And when we ask a why question, we're not asking for empathy. What it actually does is it makes them defend their actions. All right. So think about anytime somebody came to you and say, why did you do what you did? What is your response to answer the question? Well, the reason why I did what I did, and whatever comes after that, is usually to defend your actions. If you want other people to open up, you want to ask how and what questions. So instead of why did you do that, you might say, what led up to this decision, or what are the things that led up to this action? How did we think this was a good idea, or how am I supposed to support you in this? And instead of making a person very defensive, it might actually open their mind to a new perspective, or to maybe even reevaluate their own decision, to see it from a different angle that they didn't see before. Now, as I say that again, so the second thing is, instead of leading with why, you eliminate the why questions and use what and how questions instead. And here's a bonus tip: make sure your tone is in a way that is not shaming or judging. All right? Because usually when people are heated in them, they'll say, why did you do what you do? But even if we eliminate that and we used a how question, for example, how could you? See? And then the tone. So make sure your tone is a way that doesn't come across as judgmental or shaming the other person. Because again, just like a why question, your tone can make the other person defensive and not see things from your perspective. Hey guys, real quick, I am sure that all of us have had the moments where we're a little nervous or afraid to talk to somebody because we don't know how they're going to respond. Are we going to be able to talk to our life partner without them getting upset? Or are we going to talk to our boss to get that raise or that interview for that job? If we ever get nervous in those moments, we have to fearlessly communicate in a way that's effective to get the things we want and need. And if you want to know how to consistently do that, there's a formula and a program on exactly how to do that. And it's called the Be Fearless and Effective Communicators Program. If you are interested in learning more about that, you can click the link that's in the show notes, or you can go to attractiverelationships.com/fearless. So the next thing on the list of how do we eliminate the toxic arguments, especially when we're in a disagreement, the third thing is to validate their thoughts and their feelings. This is where a lot of people have the most trouble, because they feel like, a lot of people feel like, well, if I'm validating the other person, it sounds like I'm agreeing with them. And it's not exactly the case. When we are in a toxic argument or in a heated discussion, we want empathy from the other person. But if we are not willing to show empathy, how can we ask for that in return? By validating another person's thoughts and their feelings is the way that we demonstrate the empathy that we are hoping to receive back. And so the number one mistake that people make in their mind, they're showing empathy. In their mind, they're validating the other person, is they'll say something like, I hear you, but, and because I said, I hear you, like that was me communicating that I'm validating or that I understand your feelings. But how many times have you heard somebody say, I hear you, but, and you felt, oh, thank God you heard me. I really feel like you understand me. Instead, when we validate somebody's thoughts or their opinions or their feelings, the best way that I found, or the easiest way, is to summarize what they've said to you. And if you summarize what they've said to you, it's like, what I heard and what I understand is that you felt this way because of these reasons. And their response is going to be something along the lines of, yes, that's right. That's when you know you have validated their thoughts and their feelings. And then, and only then, are they going to be able to open up their mind to a different perspective. And you, as an expert communicator, may have to take the lead in showing the empathy in that way, the same empathy that you are hoping to get back in return. You can see how already, if you do that, it encourages the other person to do the same. That alone is such a powerful way to eliminate the toxic arguing that happens in relationships sometimes. Let's move on to the next one. This is number 4, and I alluded to this with the tone, and that is to be courteous. It's one of the 3 C's that we teach in the Effective Communicator program, and that is to be courteous. So we avoid language or tone that projects shame and judgment. So avoiding things like "you're wrong" or cutting people off to diminish the value of whatever they need to say, or having that tone of voice that's very like your voice sounds like it's pointing a finger at the other person. If we avoid those things by being courteous and being tactful, that will go a long way in eliminating toxic conversations. Number five, again, this goes back and ties into when you eliminate the why questions, you want to use how questions. And the number one question that, at least in your mind, if you can keep this question in your mind, this how question, it will help kind of guide the tense conversations in a way that may work out best for everybody. And this one how question is this: how can we both get what we want? How can we both get what we want? And if we're not sure we can both get what we want, some good how questions might be, how can I do what you're asking? Like, how am I supposed to do that? Is a great question to kind of open up the discussion of how things can actually work. Or another one, if you're not sure, or if somebody tells you how to do something and you still disagree with it, you might say, I don't know how I can do that when, all right, dot, 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 and you fill in the blanks. I love that statement because it's not exactly a question, it's a statement, but it includes the word how. And the reason why I love that is because it helps to avoid shaming and judging of the other person's idea, right? You're not shutting it down. You're just communicating that you don't know how to implement that for these reasons. Again, that opens up the mind and the discussion to something more healthy, as opposed to the alternative, which is, why would you suggest something like that? Why would you suggest something so stupid, right? And then toxic arguments and words fly. I don't know how I can do that when, fill in the blank. Or how am I supposed to do that when, fill in the blank. But ultimately answering the question, how do we both get what we want? So those are the five. Just if you were taking notes or keeping track, brief overview of the five, and then I'm going to give you the sixth. Be emotionally sober. Stay away from asking the question, why? Validate the other person's thoughts and feelings. Be courteous, which means avoiding language of shame and judgment. Ask how questions, especially how do we both get what we want? And here is the sixth one. We want to be collaborative over demanding. I had a conversation with the boss that literally had me put my resignation in on the spot because this boss was being demanding and not collaborating. And have you ever experienced that in your workplace or in a relationship where somebody says, they give off this tone of, all right, I talk and you listen. I don't know about you, but there's few things more infuriating that makes me want to end the relationship immediately than when somebody comes across with this demanding, like, I'm the boss and I'm going to tell you how it is. It provokes people. It definitely provokes me. But if somebody comes in a little bit more collaborative, they're inviting you to decide how to be the best, most supportive of a particular situation. For example, if you live with somebody and you could be demanding and say, you need to help more around the house. Or you could say, hey, I am struggling around the house. How can is there a way that we can kind of help each other do better to keep the house clean? Do you hear the difference? How can we do better to keep the house clean versus you need to do better to keep the house clean? One is collaborative, one is demanding. Which one do you think would actually lend to a healthy conversation? And which one do you think would lend itself to a toxic one? Obviously, if you're demanding, it's going to lead to a toxic. Now, that can be hard to do if we did not do step number one, which is be emotionally sober. Because sometimes when your feelings are hurt, we want to be demanding. Don't ever hurt my feelings again. Very demanding. And while it's very understandable, if we say and project things that way, it may not come across, it may not be received in the way that we would hope. Right? So be emotionally sober, ask the right questions, use the right tone, validate the other person, show them the empathy that you want to be shown, and be more collaborative over demanding. If you do these things, you can eliminate most, if not all, of the toxic parts of an argument or a disagreement with somebody. And instead of having those hurt feelings, you can walk away feeling better about the person you're with and actually grow with them and trust in that relationship. So try these out. If you would like to be coached on how to apply these in your specific situation, make sure to go to attractiverelationships.com. There's a free guide that includes the 5 things that are needed in any really good relationship, as well as an opportunity to get a coaching call to implement some of these things personally in your relationship that you can apply immediately. Until then, I hope this helps, and I look forward to speaking with you guys next time. As we come to the end of another episode of Attractive Relationships, I want to express my gratitude to you for tuning in. Your support really does mean the world to me. Now, if this episode brought you any value, I would truly appreciate it if you shared this podcast with anyone that you think could benefit from our discussions on effective communication and relationship building. Until next time, remember, great relationships start with great communication. So stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep building those attractive relationships.